Go.
Okay, we're back again here. You won't believe we came in on Labor Day, and we're doing a program here on the special day in which all the labor is supposed to be at home resting, but not us. You know, how about us? Some people, not us though. There's some resting, by the way. You lazy guys, what are you doing at home on Labor Day? You're supposed to be out there laboring. I did an article on Facebook today. I want to stir up a couple of more of my opponents out there. I know it's going to make them mad. I was raising the question. I was really making a statement that we should call Labor Day Capitalism Day. How do you think that? How do you think that would go with the socialists and the unions, which are, I'm repeating myself here? How would that go if we rename the day? We don't call it Labor Day anymore. We call it Capitalism Day, and everything we're giving credit to for labor, we give credit to the fact that we have a capitalist system that's produced wealth and has allowed all the things we're giving the unions credit for. We would go to the source rather than going to the edges of it and not getting to the source. And the source would be the kind of economic system that's in place in the country that allowed all these things that we have, because the number one engine for wealth creation in the world is a capitalist system, and there's no other system known to man at this point. Not saying we will never find another system that would be better. I'm saying up to this moment in time, on the 5th of September 2022, we have not found any system that's better able to create wealth than the capitalist system. And I was reading some articles that I wanted to play off on in my article, and I was saying that the one article was saying that when you think of the 8-hour workday, you think about vacation time, you think about the 8 hour of work and vacation time and all that. You think of they're saying think of the union and think of labor as having caused that. And that may sound right. I don't think that would hold up under the scrutiny of what really caused the kind of improvements you're seeing, because you can go into other parts of the world and you see that they don't have the 8-hour workday and don't have wealth either. If you could just command wealth by declaring it, then there will be no poverty-ridden countries on the planet. You simply declare that your country to be wealthy, and all the poverty will dissipate. But that's not how it works. There has to be a system in place that will produce that, and there's no system known to man that and woman that has produced the wealth that's produced by the capitalist system. And it doesn't get any credit for it. A lot of people are giving credit elsewhere, and I wanted to see if I could stir up a couple of hornets' nests by making the claim that we should call it what it is, and what really Labor Day is really Capitalism Day, because labor is given a chance to do something with his hands. If it doesn't have anything to do, because the businessman, the persons that Ayn Rand said in Atlas Shrugged, the only people that have never gone on strike, while others are claiming their indispensability and saying they're not dispensable. The only person that is not not dispensable is a person that never gone on strike. That if he in fact went on strike, he or she went on strike, then the person that would be on strike because they are the engines of the world and they are the motors of society, if they went on strike, then everything shuts down. And that's what Atlas Shrugged is about. Atlas Shrugged being written in 1957 by Ayn Rand. And she makes some magnificent points in that book. People should read it and understand that if the man of the mind, MIND, if the man of the mind goes on strike, as those who would strike against the man of the mind, where you go on strike in the factories and things of that sort, and the claim is that that would have brought about the 8-hour workday because of the strike against longer hours. And it looks like that would be the case because there were strikes, and then these results would over time have occurred. And you had child labor, children being sent not to school, but sent into the mines, excuse me, to work in the mills as a way of adding to the wealth of the family. And I'm not talking about wealth as much as I'm just talking about making the ends meet. And you had children working in the mines and so on and so forth. And there are a lot of people saying that the labor laws that ended that would have come out of the workers having protested the working conditions. But what really allowed that to take place is the same thing that allowed for the person to be in the mine in the first place: production, the man of production, the man of the mine, that would have, or the producer would have given people something to do with their hands. Before that, before this person appeared on the scene, what countries did in order to create wealth was to go over with their army and take the wealth from someone else and bring it back to their own country as booty, and made sure that they understood that if they didn't send the booty there on an annual basis as a tide to the army, which had the capacity to extract that wealth from the other country, because they had greater capacity for inflicting harm than the other country had to inflict harm on that country, then by setting that tribute there every year, they were able to, through a certain amount of banditry, make the society operate and have it operating upon wealth. It's not producing wealth; it's taking wealth. Something like the something like the tax gatherers do today.
Well, see, I've talked to socialists who admit that they'll admit that the capitalist system is the best for creating an innovation and the drive and a demand for something.
Mm.
But then they just thought because of the profits and stuff like that, people were going to become, they needed government to rein in this excess. But then again, they never addressed the government's excess use of violence and monopoly on violence. So they never addressed that. They basically err on trying to put the trust in a entity or entities that have been always shown to be abusive over time against the people that are allegedly come into existence to protect. And I'm talking about the governments of the world. So, I mean, but even the socialists, they even admit, it's what's good, but we'll let it get it rolling, but then we'll take it over and manage it better.
Yeah.
And they never can do that.
Yeah. That argument they have that you have to have some regulatory body over the capitalist system, and because they will, in fact, through a monopolistic practice, impose itself upon the price scale, because if you have a monopoly, you're the only one producing that product. We have never had, according to Ayn Rand's book called, one of her best books, not very many people talk about this particular book here, called Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. But Ayn Rand makes the claim that we've never had a monopoly that was in fact possible in the capitalist system, because if you in fact do those kinds of things where you're a monopoly, therefore you're going to become very extravagant in your pricing and the gorging that goes on because you're the only one making that product. What happens in the capitalist system is that it produces an opportunity for the other person by you raising the amount of the product, how much the product costs. What happens is that by you raising the scale, one person that's coming into the market that could not come in when the profit is at this level because he doesn't have the capital to invest in it at a higher level. When you raise the stakes of the level of the product and allow for greater profits to be made, it makes an opportunity available that wasn't there when the price was a lot lower. And her claim is, and I don't see any reason to doubt it, I haven't seen any examples where it would contradict it. I've never seen a monopoly that was not in fact backed up by government force. This idea of the robber barons. Let me read page 98 of this. I bought this book to the studio. It's one of Ayn Rand's books, but she has in it some of the other things she had written. This was called For the New Intellectuals, but it contains some excerpts from some of her other works. And her main work, as you know, is the one she wrote in 1957 called Atlas Shrugged. Let me read page 98 of the book that contains Atlas Shrugged, a comment about Atlas Shrugged in the book. And it's on page 98 of the book called For the New Intellectuals. Let me read this to you here. This is Ayn Rand talking about those who are.
I got to get you another copy. That thing's falling apart.
Yes, because I read it so much. I really most of my books by Ayn Rand look like this, by the way, because I'm constantly going through them. I'm just an Ayn Rand fan. I don't think there was a greater thinker in the 20th century. I'm thinking about some of the philosophers during that time period. I don't think there was a greater thinker that I had more admiration for. I'll put it that way and be very on the safe ground of saying, I won't say a greater thinker that existed during that time period when she lived. Ayn Rand was 1905 to 1982. Here's a comment she made, and this is on page 97. I think on page 97, the book called For the New Intellectuals. And she's quoting John Galt. In her book, she's asking the question that she asked is who is John Galt? Because John Galt is the first one to go into exile. One of the motives of society that simply shrugged, carrying the weight of the world upon his shoulders, and there's no appreciation for it. Nobody's having a day called Producer's Day or the Business Day. Where is that day? The man of production, does he have a day? It reminds me of that Red Buttons joke. He was talking about Uncle Ben, and he said, he never had a day. What about Uncle Tom? He never had a day. Very funny skit that he did. But in a more serious tone, what is a day set aside for those who are the engines and the motors of society, without which a society would not be able to function unless it has a military that can go in and just confiscate wealth, and you're constantly at war because those that take wealth from someone else will eventually set themselves up to have wealth taken from them, and you have a constancy of war going on. If you go back and look at that, you see the trend in history that mimics that. But the man of production comes on the scene, and now we don't have to have warfare as a way of wealth. Wealth can be generated through the creative process, through the man of the mind.
Another thing is too, people always point to the abuses, like government. The capitalists get too large, like Microsoft and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, it's because of collusion between those capitalists, and they buy up politicians.
Yeah,
they don't. The people, the apparatus is supposed to put in place allegedly to rein that in, becomes part of the problem.
That's right.
They don't put it. No, even Adam Smith in his Inquiry into Wealth of Nations, and the other book he wrote, Theory of Moral Sentiments, he talks about that in both books about the abuses of capitalism that's inherent in capitalism. Of course, he doesn't call it capitalism, but anyway, it is because people vying for power on the political scale use and vice versa. The corporations use each other to gain this end. But it's got to be usually it's got to be a large scale producer or a capitalist to be able to get the money to buy these politicians.
Yeah. Well, John, now what's the book by Adam Smith?
What'd you say?
What's the
other a theory of moral sentiments? If you don't, you never seen that one?
I've never seen that.
I have a copy of something. I'll bring it in. Let you read it and bring it back to me.
Definitely interested in reading it.
Because it's actually that book, Inquiry to a Wealth of Nations. He always advocated having people have familiar with that first book, then reading that, because he brings up he had already anticipated the abuses because he saw what governments did, granting monopolies or mercantilism to mercantilist. He already railed against that. What we have now is not capitalism. We call it crony capitalism now, but it was more akin to what was going on there called mercantilism.
It is, yes, it is mercantilism. Get the government involved in it and have the government do the dirty work in terms of closing this other person down, and then having
and colonizing,
and all of that too, and then paying for the right to be in the space that you denied to others that the government is keeping on the sidelines. That kind of mercantilism. But I don't think that in a capitalist system, that if the government does not get involved in it, the market is such a powerful instrument of control that the market will, in fact, at some point kick in and do the regulatory work. Now, and that's why I don't think you really need to have coercion in the capitalist system, because the punishment is the fact that the producer cannot force you to interact with the product that is being produced. You can always make a decision about whether you're going to boycott the product and so on and so forth. And that's really, as I look at, I have a TV set in my home, and that thing is about 30 years old. But why it's a floor model, and it seemed like it just goes on. It's like that bunny that goes on and on and on. What's that battery they advertise?
Ever ready?
Yeah. And that's that TV set is still operative. That thing has to be at least 30 years old. Now, why did that TV set? Why has it lasted that long? Because it could have sold some junk, and you would have to buy another one over a period of time, and so on and so forth. But then the word gets out that producer is making junk, and the word gets around, don't buy it, because look what they're making over here, just some cheap stuff, and it doesn't work that long, and it wears out over a period of time, and then it's because they don't have coercion to make you buy the product. Now, what they do is the product doesn't so much wear out. They wear the product out of your mind. They say it doesn't look to be the modern product. You make another product that looks different, or it behaves different, or it requires maybe less action on your part. It does some things on its own, and therefore the other product that still works is obsolete, and that's where they're wearing it out, not in the product. They're wearing it out in your thinking.
But you're like the other day, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I had to buy a new refrigerator. And I got this new one, relatively new. It was a good thing I bought this extended warranty from Home Depot on it. It's a Magic Chef or whatever, brand. Well, I started, if you notice that it was when it was really warm, the summer, this past summer, it was really warm on one side. So I called the service repairman. It was not freezing up popsicles fast enough too. It took hours and hours and hours. So anyway, the guy came out. This is like a year and a half, 2 years old. And he told me point blank, this guy did, the repairman, he said, they're only made for like 4 years now. Refrigerators, yeah, right. Where you got ones my grandparents retired from here, took the refrigerator, went up north, and had it sitting on their back porch, because they had one inside the house. They had this huge back porch. They had one from the 1950s. When my grandfather died in 1982, that thing was still functioning good. Yeah. Okay. We're talking, and nowadays a lifespan for 4 years compared to how long that says.
Yeah, that's right. They got program obsolescence now. That when I bought a lawnmower that has a button on it where you push the button down and it cranks the lawnmower up, so you don't have to pull the cord and get it cranked up by exerting your energy that way. You just push the thing down and it comes on. But the guy who sold it to me told me that it's only going to last a few years because it is programmed to in fact burn out, and that's how they're doing it. That's how they're doing it now. But in the time period when there was a more competitive, less regulated type of economy, we got a much more mixed economy right now. But when there was a competitive market and you had to have the competitive edge in order to sell your product, then you had this other thing that kicked in, and that is a product that had to be better than the product that was out there beside it. And the word was that this was a very good product, and everybody would go and buy it. In fact, that you talking about, you had a refrigerator, John. Um, People thought that the Frigidaire, when you say refrigerator, they thought the refrigerator was a Frigidaire because that was the way you thought about it, and it was like the top of the line. The product that nobody wanted to buy was anything made in Japan. Everybody thought that was some junk coming out of Japan, and the person over there was so miffed by the fact that Japan had that kind of a name for itself, Mitsubishi and so on, that they wanted to, in fact, change the way we looked at Japanese products and started making cars that lasted forever and got the name changed. Now you buy technology in Japan, it's product that's the whole different orientation has occurred. But that's how the capitalist system operates. That if you have a capitalist system operating more or less on pure capitalism, they've got to compete with all the others out there in the marketplace, and the market is a driving force. So let me read this to you from, this is an excerpt from Atlas Shrugged, and this is by my favorite philosopher, the great Ayn Rand. This excerpt from Atlas Shrugged. She says, every other kind and class have stopped when they so wished and have presented demands to the world claiming to be indispensable, except the men who have carried the world on their shoulders, have kept it alive, have endured torture as sole payment, but have never walked out on the human race. Well, their turn has come. Let the world discover who they are, what they do, and what happens when they refuse to function. This is a strike of the men of the mind, MIND. And if the men of the mind, not the politicians, the producers, if they go on strike, the motors of society, when they go on strike, you know how they ask, you feel me? You'll feel them. And so a lot of things, I have a hard time arguing with, so not arguing, but discussing this with some of the people who worked in the shop, because they are convinced that they're having gone out on strike and have done all these things here, the 40-hour week, all of those things. They claim that they made things better. And I always ask them this question when I hear that. It was better for you. What does your son think about it? See, they worked in a shop for for 30 and 40 years, asking where those jobs are for their children. If you're gonna strike and then shut down production, when the man of the mind has not made any demands on you for your wages, but you're making a demand upon him for his profit, what demands that you make that was beneficial to your children, and when you passed your job and went into your retirement, what was there in place that you had put in place that survived once you left?
Yeah, I can see the union argument, the need for that, because this is the birthplace of the United Auto Workers Union, UAW.
Mm-hmm.
And I had friends who had family members work there in the shops prior to the advent of the rise of the union. And then my friend's granddad, they didn't have a car, never did. They worked for GM, but he worked down the Chevrolet The Hole, and he lived about mile and a half away from there, right? He used to walk there and back every day. Well, one day he ended up getting 2 fingers severed. The first thing the foreman did is make sure his time clock, he was punched out on the time clock, and then they stitched him up in the infirmary and they sent him back. Well, there's a massive loss of blood with the 2 fingers being severed, and they sent him back to onto the assembly line. Then after his shift had ended, 12 hours, he had to walk back home. Could you imagine what kind of condition this man would have been? And he probably had to go back the next day. Okay, so I mean, this was prior to the sit-down strike in 37. So, So I mean, that kind of stuff. But then again, I always said I would want to see pushing for more industries to develop, and then actually have people really competing to keep employees. And that way, they're going to say, these guys are jerks. This happened to my buddy of mine. He got injured, and they rolled over on him and didn't let him. They didn't care. People say, screw that. I'm going to work with this other group. If you can't attract employees to produce your product, then you're out of business too. So, I mean, that's how you could assert, but I have a problem with this idealization of the unions myself. So I saw there's a pragmatic need at one time to stand up against management, but if there was more than one employer in Flint, because General Motors was the biggest employer, they would have probably wouldn't been able to get away with that kind of abusive stuff.
I look at General Motors today, and I look at it back in the time period, and I look at how it does not have the capability to provide the amount of wealth for the people that are here now compared to what was going on back in the time period. And the strikes and more strikes have weakened those companies to the point where the progenitors, those that were striking against the company, injured those companies, and they're no longer able to do the things they once did. Now they say, well, we had to strike for better wages. Well, your better wages was nothing other than inflation. You need more dollars to compensate for the dollars that are being artificially raised by you making demand. If the demand is not met, you strike and close the business down. And by closing the business down, he has no other option but to in fact accommodate your demands. And the union's issue in it is that they must continue to make more and more demands to justify their relevance. Otherwise, they're obsolete. So they have to continue to make demands, knowing that the demands will create some opposition. But in creating opposition, the union can sell itself as being relevant, because look how they are being opposed by the managers. Beyond that, you will at some point bring your what you will produce here. See, I'm not for shutting. I am not for shutting businesses down, and I do not think that is a way of handling, grievance. What General Motors did, what the unions did, UAW did. I'm in the union town here. I will tell you this. What they would do is go to the company that had the least amount of clout and then push them up against the wall You would have GM, you'd have Ford, and you would have Chrysler. And the one that was the smallest of the three companies, they would go in there because they all got UAW workers. They go in there and they would make a demand that was quite a bit, but they're trying to justify the dues that they're charging the members and things like that. So you got to show some reason why you're paying the dues, so that people like George Meany and others can live like fat cats, as people not working the shop, but are representing the people that's in there doing the hard labor. You're developing a capitalist class within the working class, is what that amounts to. George Meany and those guys go across that table and then use their workers as leverage for a lifestyle that they were in fact commanding. I don't have no respect for that, and that could be handled differently, but it was handled that way because it's one way in which unions, in fact, justify their presence. You don't have a right to shut a person's company down. What you have a right to do is to decide that you're not working at that pay scale, and you will, in fact, with your own skill level, make a demand in another marketplace because you can go somewhere else. And I'll tell you another thing. I know this is not, quote unquote kosher. I'm not here to talk about kosher. I'm talking about how the capitalist system operates. You see, you think you can pass laws against economic laws. They're talking right now about they have an anti-inflation bill that just passed. You can believe that if you want to. You can't pass a law against inflation. And they talked about what last month, during the month of July, they wanted to claim that there was no inflation. That Kamala Harris was saying there was no inflation that they had. Was it during 1 week, or was it during it was during a certain time period? And they were bragging about there was no inflation, as if their policies had caused that. What caused that there was no inflation during that time period was a marketplace, because you cannot get around supply and demand. That's an immutable law of economics that cannot be expended, dispelled, dismissed, and gotten rid of. And what caused the inflation to level off during that time period is that by raising the price as they did, listen carefully, raising the price as they did, the demand, because the price went up, the demand went down. And by the demand going down, the quantity was increased. And therefore, since the quantity has been increased, and demand doesn't meet the price, you have a supply. When the demand went down, the supply remained up. And by that being up, because the supply is higher than the demand, the supply comes down to meet the demand. And that's when the cost is lowered, not because of policy, but because of the supply and demand, which you cannot, in fact, pass a law to affect it in any way. The market does that. And what the market was doing, the reason they're having inflation, is because by the energy price going down, because of demand on it at $5 was less than it would be at $4, and so on and so forth, by the market having self-regulated, because the price now can be lowered because the quantity is such, you got to increase demand on it. What happens in that is that the market then is making an adjustment, and by making an adjustment, the price goes down, and the energy therefore everything runs through energy, and therefore other prices were normative because the energy price had been normalized through the supply, through the supply and demand phenomenon in the marketplace. The marketplace regulated that. No policy can regulate it. The market does it. Now, if you think you can do it through demand, let me tell you what happens there. I wrote this in my article also. You need to read it. If you go and make a demand and you artificially raise wages, a minimum wage, for example, set artificially by the government, is an automatic unemployment bill. If you want to see how it operates, go over to any store, Myers, for example, and see what happens to those persons working at those cash registers at low skill jobs. Go and see what they did there when they kept making a demand in terms of minimum wage going up and up and up. And what you have there, because of this nonsense, is that you have, by setting a minimum wage, you are creating unemployment. A minimum wage bill is an unemployment bill. Now, there's a way to get the wages up, but that's not the way to do it, not in the capitalist system. Because the capitalist system operates in its purest form and its greatest form, where it produces the greatest amount of where it becomes the greatest producer it can be. It does it through that which self-regulates inside the marketplace. And so what you do in terms when you got low skill, low wage workers, because there's an oversupply at that level of the workforce, because there are more people that are unskilled than they're skilled, what you do is take the unskilled labor force and give them skills at that level so that the number of person that workforce exit out, and some of them are now at another level. The numbers down here are now lower, and therefore they can sell the labor at a higher cost because commodity has been reduced. The market that doesn't use force. And you may think that the demand caused those conditions. I'm telling you that what causes the condition to have improved is an improvement in production. That's what caused it. If you think that you can demand higher wages and you're working with a shovel, and the production cost does not match the amount of production that a shovel produces, you're missing the whole point of the capitalist system. A person that has a shovel and a person that has a caterpillar, the person with a caterpillar makes more money. But why does he make more money? Because his production is greater than the person with the shovel. At this level here, the production is that, and the man of the mine, the producer, is paying for the amount of production because he has to make a profit to stay in business. If you in fact produce that level and demand a increase above your productive capacity, he either has this option open to him, either to meet the demand and therefore lose profit, and losing profit, he cannot pay for the machinery and other things that he does not attach to the workforce, and therefore he pays the cost, and you see what happens as a result of that, business is closing down. So what was a job there, there's no job there because the man drove the business out of existence. This is marketplace stuff. I know you think it's different. Now, I have been in some societies, and I've looked at this when I was there. When I go to these countries, I go to look at what's happening in those countries. I try to read the Constitution while I'm there, and I watch what they're doing. I've seen some real interesting things in some of the countries I've been in. I see the techniques they're using in some of these countries where they will make, for example, the government will say in some of those countries I've been in, they'll say, we're not taxing on your wages, and they'll think that's really true. And what they'll do is that the government will, in fact, charge the business person. Most of them are foreigners in these third world countries. A lot of foreign businesses are there. A lot of, I won't call nationalities out, but a lot, you'd be surprised of some of the person in these countries. And they have an arrangement with the government. The government keeps the wages low, and then the businesses are taxed. So the person goes there and buy the product, and it doesn't have a tax added onto it. You pay the price that is out there, and you don't see a taxation on top of it, and you think you're not being taxed by the government. The government getting this taxation by the business person. That they have an arrangement where the business person doesn't pay anything because the government keeps the wages low, and they're not paying anything to the workers. And then the businessman, because he's being protected that end, pays the government for its involvement in the market in that way, where it is what's that hand they hide in their vest, the hidden hand of the government. The hidden hand of the government. You may think that the government doesn't have his hands in it. The government has his hands in everything. There are a lot of people. I wish you could have listened to Mark Levine's program last week. I didn't catch it when it initially aired. I caught it on the weekend because he aired some of his programs over the weekend. And the one he aired that I had missed, but I'm glad I caught up with it on Saturday, was the one of him interviewing a person in that penal institution in Washington, D.C. Somebody ought to go to that site this guy was talking about called We Are Good Men, and go to that site and see what people see. People are surprised. They thought that they could go to Washington and stand peacefully, was their intent, to go there and stand upon the First Amendment rights of the right, as King would say, we have the right to protest for right.
We have somebody just inserted a comment here. So
okay.
Here, 1 gallon of water was $1 in 2021. Now in 2022, it is $1.50. Did you make 30% more to buy the same? To have more today, we have in the 2019 cost more than 30% more.
I'll tell you what I'll do in that case there. There's at one store here, one closest to where we are right now in the studio, is charging $1.29 for spring water. I drink spring water. They have now at another store, it's $1.09 for a gallon.
In your home is not on the Flint water source, right?
It is. It's on the Flint. I'm in the township.
Okay.
But I won't drink any water out of the tap. I won't give it to my dog.
Because that's my dog had to be put to sleep too about 3 years ago, a little bit over 3 years ago, because of liver failure. I never had heard of a dog having liver failure. Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the stuff that they were saying was in our water at that point, that one of the causes, one of the things that did affect was the liver. So basically, my dog may have been able to live longer if it hadn't been, because I never thought much about I just give her tap water because she drinks quite a bit a day.
The only liquid dogs should drink is water. If the water is bad, that's very damaging. Particularly, and I wouldn't give it to my dog, but I don't drink it either. I would never go back to drinking the tap water. But if they're charging because everybody's drinking the water from these bottles now and going to the store and buying water, what I do there, because there's different stores have different prices. See, I'm for punishing. See, I'm for understanding the market. The market doesn't have coercive power. For example, they'll say, we're having a sale. Do you really think they're having a sale? Wasn't the product always on sale? I mean, before they say we're having a sale, was the product before that, was the product free? No, they're always having a sale. That's why the store is there. It's not there for selling. It doesn't exist because How does it exist if it's not selling stuff? It's there to sell.
My friend told me he was a jeweler, and they always said, like, if you go like Zales, it used to be a big, big. He said 60% sale. He said what they did is they always have it marked up to 120%. They knock it down, so they're still making boatloads of money off of it.
Right.
Yeah.
The one thing is that the person is not going to take a loss, because you cannot operate business taking losses. You have to make a profit. That's just the way the market operates. But I was talking about this water, since it raised the issue of the water. There's one store that has spring water for $1.29 a gallon. That store is closest to me. But because I cannot be coerced to buy that water because of the proximity of the store to my house, I drive further out and buy it from another store. But I don't just go there for the water. I go there to do a whole lot of shopping for other things as well. Now, when I don't buy the water at that other person's store, he's not just getting punished because of the fact that there's a water purchase that he loses. There's also a problem with the fact that that customer that would buy other things if he's in that store would buy other things as well. So that product also is on that shelf staying there because the customer is going elsewhere. You put in tremendous pressure on that business to negotiate with the customer without anybody stopping anything from operating. I'm not trying to put him out of business. I'm not trying to shut his stores down in any of that. What I'm doing is understand how the market operates and making it operate to my advantage. Every time you go and strike against a company, that cost is passed on to the customer. It inflates the cost of products. You have to inflate the currency where it doesn't buy anything. Because people don't understand the market, 98% of the dollar has lost its value. Why do you think you go to the store right now and you see a Hershey bar for $1.59 when it used to cost a nickel? They're not putting more sugar in there. They're not putting more almonds in the candy bar, the Hershey bar that has almonds in it, same number of almonds. And when you buy the almond joy, it's got 2 pieces of almonds in there, might be smaller. But look at the price there. Why did that go up like that? Because because you weaken the dollar, where the value of the dollar goes down. In other words, you cannot defeat how the market is designed to operate through this gadgetry that we're using, because we don't understand the market. You don't have demands made upon the employer, and your demand is made without cost. The cost is the cost of the business, the cost of the jobs, the exportation of jobs out of the country, and the rest of it. There is an effect of it. If the market doesn't cause it, it's caused artificially. The market will respond to that artificiality being injected into the marketplace. It will have an effect upon whether or not the business is even there. So I was saying, go to the store, for example, and just watch how it operates. They made a demand upon the wages, $15 and something an hour. They even trying to attract workers right now, saying that there's one girl at the store that stands at the store, and her job is just to greet people. Welcome to so and so, welcome to the store, blah blah blah. How you say that kind of thing. Make you welcome when you walk in the door. Well, standing at that door like that doesn't produce anything. That job pays $13.75 an hour. I always care when I go in there about why you around here lottering at the store, standing around not doing anything. But that's a $13.75 an hour job there. The $15 an hour job, that's the others that's doing stuff, putting stuff on the shelf and things of that sort. But even that job has been restricted because of the minimum wage law. Go up there and see them doing this at the counter. You slide, everything got a code on it, and you slide across that code, and it registers the price and so on and so forth, right? But that's not all it's doing. What it's also doing is indexing how many of that product has been sold, so they know when to make another order. When the product in the store has gone down, it's also keeping an account in that computer. So the ones going around there doing the inventory of the product, that person's job been cut out. The $15 an hour job cost him his job. You think that just happens in that one place where you're going out there and you now, by the way, I wrote this in my article today also. I said that the person that it's not that the minimum wage went down from $15 an hour. What happens is that what the store is doing is they're employing the customer to bag his own product up and put in there, and the cost for the employer that's not hired, but he's actually doing the work of the employer, that person makes zero, and the value of that is given to him by now you can go home and cook. See, these are immutable laws, economic laws. And you have to find out when they say, by the way, I'll give you a little advice here. When something goes on sale, and they'll say it's on sale, well, it's always on sale. What they're saying, what they'll do is on the idea of sale is that attracts the eye that you feel you're getting a better bargain. Now, I wanted to buy, I'm wearing a shirt right now, maybe about 5 of them at a time, but they were selling shirts like this right here for $33 at this one store. I kept going back every week. I was not going to pay $33 for a shirt. So I kept going back, waiting, watching the shirts from my vantage point, sitting there at $33. I'm not buying it at $33. I'm sitting there and I'm negotiating by not buying it. There's negotiation going on in that store between me and the owner of that store by that product sitting on that shelf. Now, why did they put it on sale? Can I ask you that question? All you workers out there who work hard for the money, and you better treat them right. How am I negotiating? By recognizing there's no coercion in the workforce, in the negotiation process. And what I'm doing in there is I'm going to the store and I'm letting that product sit there because I'm not going to pay that price for it. And if customers go there and see that price is beyond what they want to pay, they are negotiating. And at a certain point, what will happen is the proprietor will put it on sale, and it goes on sale. What they mean by that is that they could not set the price where it was. And now, because of the negotiation that went on between the person that sit on that shelf, what happens is that through that negotiation that goes on, nonverbal as it is, you're negotiating by not buying the product. Now they put it at another price to see if it sells at that price. If it doesn't sell at that price, they reduce the price further. What they cannot do is reduce the price down to where it is a zero-sum game for the proprietor, because he cannot do that and stay in business. The question is, where is the comfort zone where there's win-win? For me, I don't want to drive me out of business. I want a win-win situation because there's no coercion in the marketplace, and I want a win-win. I want to walk out where I'm able to win. I'm also able to keep the person in business because the store is in my neighborhood. I don't want to hurt the proprietor, but that's not what they do when they strike. They want to hurt him and make him say ouch. And when that happens and you're using that kind of coercive power, it may seem like you're causing a good result. What you're doing is causing injury to occur. If you doubt that, ask yourself, what is the industrial base look like in America today? Tell me, answer that question. What has happened to industry? And you may, and another thing, I want to tell you something here, because I know how they fool you into believing that there is no cost to what they're doing with these policies they're putting in place. They'll say that they'll make it seem like China is buying up our debt. People actually believe that they're buying America's debt. I cannot even believe they would even push that across the airwaves or wherever they're pushing it. and sell that to the American people. How do we fall for stuff like that? They're buying up our debt. They're not buying up our debt. What is happening is we're not producing anything, and we are printing money up or debt to pay for it with this counterfeit currency we're producing that's backed up by nothing other than the government's word that it has that value in it, but it doesn't have any value at all. It's just numbers on paper, and we are printing these dollars up, and we're buying that which is produced elsewhere, and they're holding that debt over in their countries because let me tell you this, because your debt is your currency.
Okay, we have the same poster says we need to learn as much as we can, and then he also said the rule is buy U.S. is for sale. I mean, how do you did already cover? I just saw the comment.
I'm glad you're here. We need to talk about this a lot more than we do, because they got code words that are designed to confuse the public about what it is that they're doing. They're talking about quantitative easing. They know that you don't know what that means. They talk about that. They're talking to each other, and they're talking in code. They're talking about printing paper, and they're easing up on the amount of currency because it takes more currency to buy anything, so they must print more of it. But by printing more of it and getting away from supply and demand, which is an immutable law in economics, they are printing currency up that has no value to it. And what it does, once you do that artificially and put more currency in circulation, it weakens all of the dollars already in circulation, it makes those dollars weaker. So all the dollars that are put out there, the extra dollars, weaken the dollars already in circulation. And by them being collectively weaker, they do not buy as much. And that's where inflation comes from. Inflation can, John, we're running out of time. Inflation can only be produced by government, and it's produced by quantitative easing, meaning they're printing currency that has no value to it. If it's not backed up by anything other than the fact you're printing more paper. If you go and change a $20 bill, you can't change it anymore for gold like you once were able to do. You say it's a gold certificate of $20. You can go and change the $20 certificate. Gold certificate for $20 in gold. You can't do that anymore. What you can do with a $20 bill now is you can change the $20 bill and get 4 5s with it. You can get 21s, 2 10s, 4 5s, or another combination that you might ask for. But you have not changed the value of the currency, which is just as valueless when it's one bill or $20. It's just as worthless as it would be if you have $21 bills of currency. Equally valueless. There's no value in either one of them. Just numbers on paper. Okay, what I want to leave you with is that the market is the regulatory board. It's its own regulatory board, and you don't have child labor now anymore. Why? You might say it's because there's a law against it. You don't need to have the children 6 years old working in factories anymore, because the production went up with the technology, and therefore a worker can produce enough that does not have to have children in the factories anymore. That's what produced it. The capitalist system did. Okay, got to get out of here. Happy Labor Day, but we're going to call it, when we get to that my point of understanding, we're going to call it what it actually is. Happy Capitalism Day. Okay, until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.